Well, welcome, welcome. If this one thing happens, I actually think it's going to be time to buy real estate hardcore because I think everybody else is going to be freaking out. So, you may have heard of something before called the yield curve and the inversion of the yield curve. I'm pretty sure I was in Park City, Utah, making Meet Kevin reports about the original sort of inversion of the yield curve that we were talking about. You remember this? This was like back in I think it was February. We were talking about how the yield curve had inverted. Yeah, that was the 10-year 3-month yield curve that inverted. Well, guess what article just ran on CNBC? And they're right, because this is the one that I have been paying attention to. In the crash course, both that I just did in New York City and the one that I did in July in Chicago, the same question came up, and that was, Kevin, what's going to happen if the yield curve what's actually the question was, the question was, what about the yield curve inversion? And my response had always been the same thing. I'm only going to be worried if the 10-2 inverts, so the 10-year 3-month inverted. Well, again, look at what CNBC just ran. Here it is. I'm going to screen share it. Look at this. The main yield curve nearly inverts. And this is the 10-2. This is actually the one that does concern me. And I'm going to get into why it concerns me, but then I'm also going to get into kind of what I think you should do about it. But this is very interesting to me that now it's kind of like a game of semantics, that it's kind of like, wait, the yield curve inverted, but now we're going to talk about the real yield curve inversion. So I think it's kind of hilarious. We're playing with words here, basically. But here's the thing. The reason I don't like the 10-2 is it tends to be more of a predictor of a recession than any other kind of yield curve. This is the one that makes me more nervous. And when I zoom into this one, watch what happens. We're just going to zoom in here really quick. And what we want or don't want is we really don't want this blue line to cross the black line. As of yesterday, it was 7 basis points away from crossing that line. Well, as of today, it's only 2 basis points away, which basically means, all in all, we are really, really, really close to this particular yield curve inverting, which to me is way worse than the 10-3. Okay, now, what do I actually think about this happening, and does it make me nervous? Partly it does. I mean, I don't like this. I never like this kind of negative drama in the marketplace. But I get a lot of people asking me all the time, Kevin, should I still be considering buying real estate right now? If I've got 5% down, I got 20% down, I'm ready to buy, what should I do? I try to look macro. What's up, everybody in chat? I'll get to you in a sec, don't worry. What should I be doing in the macro? And what I try to do is I go, okay, what is pushing this yield curve down? And there are a few things doing it, and there are things we've all heard before. We know that Brexit is going crazy. Not only has the whole British exit from the European Union been going on for years now, but now it's actually starting to take a strong toll on UK's economy. That's bad. That's sending shockwaves globally. Then we have Hong Kong that doesn't even have a functional airport because of protests. Can't seem to get their own city under control. So we have this sort of, that on top of obviously the trade tension, we have this sort of global crisis going on, along with our own political issues in our own country, in the United States, that in my opinion are actually dramatically contributing to this sort of potential inversion. And it's something that we actually didn't even see this bad when we had our first yield curve inversion earlier this year. So unfortunately, I hate to say it, but this isn't exactly the best news, but I think it's potentially going to be short-term news. So here's kind of my bottom line for all of you and where I'm going with this. I personally, and I see this here in the comments, I personally am not so worried about the election. I've never really seen a massive impact to real estate from elections. And, somebody might pull up some stat from the 70s or something like that to try to counter me on that. But elections have never really concerned me. Usually what concerns me is really what's happening with our global economy. And that's really where we're seeing problems right now, and obviously massive slowing. And so the bottom line that I look at, and sort of my read on the situation is this. And then what I'm going to tell you is I'm going to give you 3 tips on kind of what to do right now. So my read is we have a whole lot of crap going on around the entire world that is dragging down yields, on pretty much everything but stocks, because stocks just don't seem to do anything but go up at the moment, which is very weird. But everything is really slowing with the exception of kind of the US stock market. And my expectation is if you're looking to flip real estate, if you're looking to do short-term bets on anything, there's a high probability that you'll get hurt. On flips, on short-term investing into Bitcoin, on short-term bets in the stock market, I think the marketplace is going to be very volatile over the next 4 years is my guess. However, in that volatility, I think there are going to be a lot of opportunities to buy real estate because I think this volatility will go away once Brexit resolves itself, once the Chinese trade war resolves itself, once, all these election fears resolve themselves. I really think, and I believe this right now, that the market will slowly come out of this slump again, mostly because every single day I'm looking for that scary black swan indicator that's saying, you know what, the market's officially going to crash this time. We're officially going to see 2008 again. I'm telling you, I picked this book up. I picked this book up in like 3 of my last videos, mostly because I look at it every day and I'm like, where is it? Where is what is it going to be this time? So believe me when I say I'm studying this all the time because I'm fanatical about this. I want to be the first YouTube channel to come out and tell you, I found it. Here it is. This is going to be what officially is going to crash the marketplace. But I just don't see it yet. So what I want to do is I want to give you 3 bits of advice because after all, you're here for the title. And the title is, if this happens, buy real estate ASAP. And so what I mean by that is, if we see the inversion of the yield curve, buy real estate right away, the inversion of the 10-2, this new one. If we see the inversion of the yield curve, in my opinion, you should buy real estate right away. However, now these are the important steps. You must buy planning to hold this real estate for, in my opinion, at least 15 years. I don't want to hear about it if you're thinking about buying real estate for less than 15 years. So if it's less than 15 years, don't even consider it. Ashley, oh my gosh, what's up? That is amazing. Thank you so much for that donation. Very, very generous of you. We're going to be looking at your landlord pictures in the course in about 10 minutes, by the way, when we do our private course live stream. So thank you for sharing those and sending those over. And thanks for that very generous donation. But okay, so if you're going to be holding real estate for 15 years at least, you should be buying, especially if this yield curve inverts. Why and what should you do? What are the 3 things? Well, first of all, people are going to be panicking. The 10-2 inverting is going to be front page news. It's not just going to be some stupid, CNBC article over here. It is literally going to be a disaster in terms of the news and what's going to be all over the marketplace. I mean, it's going to be really bad news. But what are the 3 things that you should really do? Well, first of all, buy if you have the long run mindset. But number 1 of the 3 things, I want you to be greedy. And the way I want you to be greedy is I really want you to start locking in those 30-year fixed rate loans and getting as much control of real estate in a relatively safe manner as possible. I posted on my Instagram this morning. Follow me on Instagram at @MeKevin if you haven't yet. I posted on my Instagram story this morning, somebody that posted, let me see, I'm going to pull it up really quick because it's actually very, very important for anybody interested in money to consider this way. Let's see, after I get past Max. Okay. So, D Levi says, we're not necessarily, and this was a YouTube comment, we're not necessarily concerned that housing values will drop. We are worried on a rental property. What if rent prices drop? Let's say rent is $1,000 and you owe $800, with all your expenses in, your cash flow is $200. Then markets decline, and let's say worst case scenario, rents go down to $700. Now your cash flow is negative $100. That is a big concern of ours. And a very, very important thing for us to always keep in mind, which is right along with what my reply is if you can't afford a slight negative cash flow, worst case scenario, don't get into real estate. Because if you look at real estate with this 15-year long-term mindset, a little bit of a negative cash flow in a worst case scenario. Don't misquote me thinking I'm saying go out there and go buy negative cash flow in real estate. Thank you so much for the $2 for iced coffee. My iced coffee is cheaper than 20 cents. Anyway, if you can't handle the potential of a small negative cash flow, don't buy real estate. The reason I say that is because when you analyze negative cash flows, I'm not even talking about appreciation. I'm not even talking about, whatever, a principal pay down or tax benefits or all of that stuff. I legitimately want you to think to yourself, if you can't handle $100 negative cash flow per month, which is $1,200 per year, you should not be buying real estate. Much the same. This was a couple. So I countered and I said, imagine this. Imagine you have a negative $300 cash flow. Let's annualize it. That's negative $3,600 per year. If you can't, between two people, figure out how to come up with an extra $3,600 per year, don't buy real estate. Now, obviously, the goal is not to get into negative cash flowing real estate. Obviously, the goal is to follow the principles that I outline on the channel for free and in the course, and where I teach you how to buy wedge deals. And guess what happens when you buy wedge deals? They cash flow. And people come to me all the time, especially in the YouTube comments. I read every single comment. And I get these comments where people are like, Kevin, I can't get cash flowing deals. I can't get cash flowing deals. And yet people are looking at like these overpriced properties, or they're looking at crap properties on busy roads, or yabuts, as I call them, with funky additions. And of course, nothing makes sense. It's like trying to put a round peg in a square hole. It doesn't work. So I mean, very, very important that you keep those things in mind. First of all, the 15-year horizon. Second of all, go into real estate with the mindset that if worst case scenario, I have a small negative cash flow, I know I can make the money. And I see the long-term benefits of owning real estate. That's where buying a wedge deal comes in, where the appreciation comes in. The cash flow always comes. You know, another favorite one that I get is people will always say things like, well, Kevin, I want cash flow tomorrow. And let me ask you this. This is a challenge literally for everybody watching this. Ask yourself this. What's easier, having a zero net worth and creating cash flow tomorrow, or having a large net worth, $5 million, $10 million, $20 million, and creating cash flow tomorrow? What's easier? I mean, it should be obvious. When you have a net worth, when you create a net worth, when you create equity in your life, whether it's through real estate or stocks or whatever, even if you don't have cash flow today, it's very easy to convert a net worth into cash flow. But if you don't yet have a net worth, don't bother. Like, there's no such thing as passive income. Look, I've been watching some Gary Vee videos, and Gary Vee is always like, oh, everybody's trying to sell this passive income bullcrap where you can get passive income tomorrow. And he's right. He's right. It is bullcrap. If you don't have a net worth, you ain't creating passive income tomorrow. Okay, perfect. So the number one thing that I said was be greedy. Lock in these 30-year fixed rate mortgages. Lock in as many of these as you can because the rates are so dirt cheap right now. The number two thing that I want you to do is when you're negotiating your deals, when you're writing offers and you're negotiating repairs, negotiate on red days. Like literally when the stock market is red, send in your repair requests and send in your offer. Those are the best days. When everything is red, write the offers. When the yield curve inverts, possibly tomorrow, write your offer. Because there are going to be sellers losing their crap. I promise you, sellers look at this like crazy. Number three, you need to negotiate with time. Right now, you being a buyer, you are in the driver's seat. It's much like a landlord before a tenant takes possession. You have time. Once you are a landlord and a tenant has possession, you don't have time anymore. When you're a seller in today's market, you do not have time. But you as a buyer, you have time. So don't get too anxious. All right, let's do some questions. And then I've got, in 7 minutes, I promised I would be doing a private live stream for the investing course. So I saw a report that U.S. mortgage debt is as high as before the crash. Wages have not kept up to warrant this. Yes, look, U.S. mortgage debt going up is a consequence of a growing economy. But to relate it to previous times before, the last crash, to me doesn't really matter that much because the economy has grown, money has expanded. But something that's really interesting to me is I keep hearing this argument about real wage growth. And what I really like to do is, let me see if I could pull this up right now. I really want real earnings. Here we go. This is to me very interesting. Watch this, okay? Everybody's always like, oh, wages haven't grown. Wages haven't been keeping pace or whatever, this, that, or whatever. Look at real wage growth. You can look this stuff up. Employed, full-time, median, usual, weekly, real earnings. Basically, real earnings is the amount of money people are getting paid minus inflation. It has been going up. There is a trend of this going upwards. And yes, maybe. And then, people like to counter and say, oh, but it's not going up as fast. Hey, but the direction is still positive, and these are things to keep an eye on. If this were going downwards, I'd be nervous. I get these other people that are like, oh, what's going to happen? The dollar's going to lose all its value, or there's going to be this hyperinflation or whatever. I don't believe it. And even if there is hyperinflation, I would rather own fixed assets like real estate. Because I can always sell my real estate in Bitcoin if I needed to, or some other currency. So if you want to know about the yield curve inversion, the yield curve is basically the difference in interest rate that's being paid between the 10-year treasury bond and the 2-year treasury bond. And generally, you should be getting paid more for the 10-year and less for the 2-year. But those are about equal right now. Here's that chart again. Look at that. You can see when this hits that black line right here, they are literally equal. And the inversion is when this goes below that line, which is really what you want to pay attention to. That's when I guarantee you it is going to be all over those. It is way hot in here. This room is getting beat. It is hot. I need to crank this air conditioning more. This is why I usually film at night, actually. But to me, this is breaking news. So I always say, hey, you know what? I don't really care what I look like. I'll just come to you with a live whenever I got it. I heard you say pay down debt first, but would you recommend spending $10K I have saved to buy a rental now or pay off the remainder of my vehicle and student loans? I'm a big fan of getting out of car debt and student loans. I paid off my Prius when I bought my first property. And I bet you what you could do, Ryan, is you could borrow an extra 10 grand from somebody, pay off your car, pay off your student loan, get a second lien on the place you want to buy because you're going to follow the principles in the real estate investing course. You're going to use that coupon code SHORTREDFIN for 20% off. And yes, the price did go up a little bit from last time. People keep wondering, but it's a one-time payment thing anyway. Put a second on that property. And if you get a good wedge deal, you still have equity. People come to me all the time. They're like, oh my gosh, Kevin, if I get a first and a second, that's terrible. No, it's not. Because if you buy a place for $450,000 and then you put 50 grand into it and it's worth 600 grand. And so what? You took a second out for 30 grand even. You put 5% down on the deal. Well, what are you into the deal for? 450 times 0.95 is 427 in debt, 427.5 in debt. Plus you took out 30 grand. Now you're 457.5 in debt, $457,000 in debt, but the property's worth $600,000. It's as if you put 23.5% down. It's like, who cares if it's one mortgage or 5 mortgages? If you put, if you got a loan for 457 and the property's worth 6, you have insulation, you have protection, you have a blanket. And that is the most important thing when, if the market ever, has a tumble or the market is as volatile as it is now, because right now we're seeing median home prices do this. They're going up in 1 month, they're going down the next month, they're up and down, but they're all kind of along the same baseline of really slow growth. We're not seeing a crashing market like we saw last year. Things have sort of rebounded since then. But yeah, absolutely. I prefer 10 grand for my first wedge deal, being patient. Awesome. Good for you. What if I got denied for a secured credit card? Go apply for the Apple credit card. I keep getting messages from people. They're like, I got in with a 585 credit score. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. Okay, whatever. What do I think about owning rental townhomes? I love owning rental townhomes. I think townhomes and condos are a great way to start. House costs $50K, need $120K rehab, 4.2, comps 180 to 200. Bro, don't even touch that. Don't even touch it, man. Look, you're telling me it's a $50,000 house. You need to put in $120,000 and it's going to be worth on the low 180. I mean, 50 plus 120 is $170,000. And then you have holding costs, utility, property taxes, mortgage, loans, your time. You're being compensated nothing for buying that deal. Bitsy, I do not like that deal. That, by the way, is a sample of how I talk in our actual private live streams in the investing course, because I don't go for anything that looks crappy. Let's see. I got to go in like a minute. I'm 18 years old. I have 20K saved up, no recent income, but should I go with an FHA loan co-signing? Yeah, of course, go for an FHA loan. I think that's awesome. Thank you so much, Miguel. What do I think about buying office buildings? Don't buy office buildings. They suck balls. Sorry, that's the short answer I'm getting. I hate office buildings. Would you buy a 200K for rent at 1,800? I don't know, Billy. It depends on what the comps are. I got to look at the address and the comps. How much did I spend on my wedding? Bro, Nick, that is a video right there. like clickbait video because it's that low. I hate weddings, honestly. I like going to weddings because I get free stuff. You buy real estate anytime if you're going to hold for 15 years. Is the inversion even a factor? And so the point of this video, and watch the advice that I gave you in this video because I got to go after this. But to me, the inversion is going to be a negotiation tool going forth. It is a tool. Okay, I have to jump on over to the private live stream now. I've got a bunch of questions to answer, and then I'm going on a date with Lauren. Thank you very much for being here. I hope you enjoyed this breaking news, and until next time I decide to go live.